If you want to write a book and become a best-selling author, you're in the right place. At Elite Online Publishing, we can help you create, publish, and market your book so that it becomes a #1 bestseller. We work with a limited number of authors to ensure that they receive the best possible service. So if you want to learn how to write and publish a book that will empower you to smartly grow your brand, business, and credibility, apply today. We look forward to working with you.
Hi, this is Melanie Johnson. All right, we have such a great interview coming up today. I just want to share with you, we have Keri-Rae Barnum. She is the president of New Shelf Books. Have you ever wondered how to get your book into libraries and bookstores and airports? We get that question all the time, but how do I make sure my book's going to be in a bookstore? How do I get it into the library and know that I'm going to sell them to the libraries? Well, she has all the secrets to that, and we're going to dive deep into that. Thanks, Keri-Rae, for coming today.
Of course, it's such a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So tell us how you got started in this journey of being involved with New Shelf Books and getting into the publishing business and really the distribution and helping authors get into bookstores.
Sure, absolutely. Well, it started very young. Like many young children, I loved reading. I devoured books. I would read a book a day. And so it's always been my dream to work in some type of capacity where I get to work with books. And I actually started my career in marketing. I've worked in marketing for over 15 years with different areas. And I met a woman locally in Rochester, New York, who owned New Shelves Books. And she was like, I just need someone who can do a little side marketing, just a little bit. And I was like, well, I can do that. And I, at the time, was a stay-at-home mom. And so I jumped into it. And 3 years later, I was running the company. It was one of those things where I had this experience marketing, and then I had the passion for books. And when I got to marry them, it was magic. And so that's how it all started. And I have been so blessed to be introduced to so many wonderful professionals in the industry through Amy Collins, who did start New Shelves Books. And so I have just been a sponge, and it's things I've been following for years and have now been able to implement. And it's been so much fun working with authors and publishers and getting to be embraced by this huge group that is the publishing community.
Oh, I just love that. There's so much talk now about, because before in the olden days, like maybe just 10 years ago, that all books were pretty much sold. Mostly you figured that they were sold more at bookstores, and that has changed so much. How do you feel the differences of where books are sold mostly? Is it more online today or still more in bookstores? And how important is it to be into bookstores?
Sure. I think that there are more books sold online. However, many of those online stores are from the e-commerce sites of bookstores. So it's not just Amazon. Although Amazon does have about 54% of the print book market, which is the majority. And then ebooks are really hard because ebooks, we track them, but on Amazon, they don't track them the same, and they don't put out all of the information. Then, of course, we've got, Kindle Unlimited and Kindle Select. So it's this whole market that's a bit of a mystery, but there are estimates out there that about 91% of ebooks are purchased and consumed right through Amazon. So I think we have to admit ebooks and the online market is huge. However, what we've also seen is that there is a hunger, especially after the last couple of years, there's this hunger to be in a bookstore, to touch the books, to smell them, to see people who love books like you do. And so I think that we are seeing kind of a trend back to the indie bookstore, not so much the chain, but the indie bookstore. There have been a lot of communities rallying behind that. And so I do think online is a bigger market, but I think that there's a special little spot in bookstores, particularly indie bookstores, that if you can get in there, you have such huge potential to have your book seen, to get new readers, and to sell more books.
Are you seeing a trend that the big box bookstores are starting to go away and that more mom and pop are still surviving and coming up? What do you see the trend in just bookstore, retail bookstores, brick and mortar in general?
Yeah, well, what we're seeing is that the the big chain stores, what we're seeing is they have had to up their digital game. They are now doing a lot more online. They're doing online events. So we're still seeing people come into the stores, but those big chain stores that before kind of just took traffic for granted, they're now having to work for it. And they're having to work pretty hard to get those sales. And I think that over time, some of those big chains are going to struggle. And what we're seeing is that those chains are starting to encompass more than just books. That's how they're keeping people in the store. It used to be that a bookstore was a bookstore. Now we're seeing bookstores that are also wine bars. We're seeing bookstores and coffee shops or bake shops. We're seeing collaborative shops. And so I think that is why those mom and pop or those indie stores are doing so well, because it's a community. It's not just a store, it's a community that they're building. And that's why we're seeing those in some cases thrive, because people want to support something locally. They want to root for something and they want a win, especially lately. So we're seeing a lot of that.
I think that's really interesting that you're saying that they're collaborating with, something that goes with it. I mean, Barnes and Noble used to always have Starbucks in it, but like you say, to create that little niche where they're coming in for food or wine and having a whole experience. And I've been reading so much about the metaverse coming up. I mean, it's just so trending, the metaverse, and reading about actually the fashion industry, how they're thinking stores down the road, they're going to just have like one or two of the garments, and then you're going to walk into this metaverse and see the clothes, be able to try them on, and then order them right there. And I'm thinking bookstores are going to turn into that too, where they're not going to have all the inventory there, but you're going to have some kind of experience where you feel like you can't necessarily get it at home, or it's all in one place. Do you feel like that's coming too?
Yes, I do. I think that there will be some of that. However, I think that there's something about books, unlike clothes, where sometimes for clothes, we want to order them at home so we can try them on at home when we feel like it. We can make sure that we're not under those, those lights that make us look 10 pounds slimmer.
Yeah.
Whereas books, we want to hold them, especially younger ages. Children are very tactile. They want to hold a book. They want to feel a book. And I think that we will continue to see that, because what do you do when you pick up a book in a bookstore? You pick it up, you flip it over, you look at the back cover, you flip through the inside, and it's not the same online. And I do think that, especially right now, as younger generations come up, they're much more comfortable with online, with e-commerce. And so I think that slowly that will begin to happen. But I think that books are almost headed the way of the record, where it is becoming trendy to go back into the shop now. And that's what we're going to see. And I think that it's going to be that community and that kind of trendiness that keeps bookstores as we know them right now, with a little bit of a twist. Like you said, those wine bars, the coffee shops. We're seeing a lot of art being sold. Local art will hang on the walls and you can buy art off of the walls. So it's an area where more than just the bookseller has an interest in keeping the store open and sending traffic there. And I think we're going to keep seeing that. I don't think we'll totally ever move to a metaverse or something where you can't buy it and take it home, because that's what we want. I found this book. I want to go curl up on my couch and read it right now.
Yeah, I agree. All right. So the $1,000,000 question is then, how do I get my book into bookstores?
Yeah. I think this is something that the indie community in particular struggles with, because as indie publishing has come up, we see people who are really successful. I mean, I know people who make six figures on Amazon as authors, and they're doing really well, but they struggle to get into bookstores. And the reason is that bookstores are used to working with the trade industry. There are rules that maybe not everyone knows, but you still have to follow them. For example, a bookstore is expecting a trade discount. What's a trade discount? It means that you're giving them a 40% discount so that they can then sell that book, make a profit, pay their overhead. So it's things like that, that when you have worked on Amazon and you don't have to think about these things, it's a whole new set of rules to learn. And when you go to a bookstore, I see this all the time. Oh, my book's available on Amazon. You can buy it there and then resell it. Why would they do that? Number one, it's their biggest competition. And number two, there's no profit to be had. So while we think very lovingly of our bookstores and very community and that kind of vibe, it's also important to remember that bookstores are businesses, and we as authors and publishers have to think about their bottom line. It's not a help me, it's a help me help you. Carry my book, take this discount, I'll drive traffic so we both make money. And it's that symbiotic partnership that has to happen. And that's what publishers have with bookstores right now. And it's what indie authors have to learn if they want to successfully get their book into bookstores.
Well, do you think if your book is published through Ingram, which has the catalog that bookstores order from, is that enough? Or do you feel like, I feel like the edge that the big publishing houses have are they have sales reps that work for them that help promote books to make sure, hey, this is coming up, this is a launch, this is going to be big, to see if they will carry them. So kind of walk us through Ingram and sales reps.
Sure. So Ingram, of course, is one of the largest wholesalers, certainly in the US, for retail bookstores. And most indie authors will get into Ingram via Ingram Spark, which are two different companies. Very important to realize that Ingram Spark is your print on demand. They print the book. Ingram Wholesale is the wholesale channel that bookstores order from, or libraries, pretty much anyone who's retail. And so what happens is that they do put your book in a catalog, but just because you're in a catalog doesn't mean you're being marketed. You really hit that straight on, Melanie. And so it's important that you market your own books or you work with someone who does that. This is what New Shelves does. New Shelves has relationships with bookstores and libraries across the US, and we market books that we think would fit well in those markets to the bookstores, to the libraries. And we work with indie press, as well as we have quite a few authors who are pushing their own books from larger presses because they want to keep their numbers up to keep getting those contracts. So it is important. It's not enough simply to have your book available. Just like if you're using Amazon, it's not enough to just have your book on Amazon. There are approximately 1 million titles going up on Amazon every year. If you do not push your book to the top, you are one in a million and you will never be seen. You'll never be bought. It's the same thing in Ingram. You have to push your book to the top of the marketplace so that it can be seen and it can be bought. And the way that you do that is through marketing. You have to tell the bookstores. And I always encourage indies that I work with in particular, go to your local bookstores. Tell them you have a community here. And rather than sending people an Amazon link, you'd love to send them to their store to buy your book. Ask if they're doing events. Many indie bookstores do local events for authors, for signings, or they'll have Indie Day where they have several indies in and out. And so you get a bookstore signing, which is a really fun experience as an author. So it is making sure that your book's available. It's available at the right terms. You need the right discounts. You need to know if your book's going to be returnable or not, because they're industry standards. And then you have to tell people that your book's available and you have to sell them on it. Because if they don't see it as a smart business decision that they can make a profit on, then they're not going to carry your book. It is a business at the bottom line.
So you start really organically, locally where you are. And then if it works there, then just start to outreach further and further. Because like if you're from, I live in Houston, Texas, and if I reach out to Nashville to the bookstore, there's really no connection unless my book is already proving that it's selling a lot. Does that help by showing, hey, it's that it is ranking on Amazon, that it's the #1 bestseller, that I have X amount of reviews? What should that look like to show that it's successful?
Sure. And yes, I do recommend you start locally. However, as far as mentioning Amazon, Amazon is he who shall not be named. It's a little bit of that. You can say, I've made #1 bestseller list. I have 500 reader reviews. You just, when possible, want to leave the word Amazon out unless you are specifically saying, I want to divert traffic from Amazon to your store. However, saying the book has sold X amount of copies. I grew up in Memphis. And so I really think that I've got a strong community that would come to your shop, let's say Novel in Memphis. I think that people would come and buy the book, and I want to drive the traffic there, especially over the holiday season. Would you consider carrying a couple of copies of my book? Or I remember going to your bookstore as a child. It's one of my fondest memories, and I would love to promote you through my book. Will you allow me to do that? Again, it's always what can you do for them as you're asking them to do something for you, and start small and know that most bookstores, they're not ordering cartons and cartons of your book. You're not getting a front and center table. That is prime real estate. And as a business, they're going to put their big #1 bestseller, New York Times bestseller books right front and center. But they will very often, if you have the right terms, order 3 to 5 copies and put them on the shelves. If they get bought, they're going to buy more, and sometimes they'll double their order. So it's important that once you convince them to carry your book, that you are driving traffic to that store to get those books bought, so that, again, they're thinking, okay, they really are selling this book. I really should put it in the front. Maybe I'll put it on an end cap. And that is how you grow from just getting your foot in the door to becoming something that sells organically in their store.
That makes sense. And I think the biggest lesson here is to ask, right? We had an author, Clark East. He walked into several local bookstores with, boxes of his books and said, would you carry it here? I'm a local author. And all of them said yes. So unless you ask, you don't know. Do you think you can be successful even if you don't get your book into bookstores, or it's something you don't even attempt to do? Can you still have success with your book?
As I mentioned, I have people I work with. I have clients who earn high 6 figures through Amazon alone. So is it possible? Yes. However, almost every author I speak to will say it's kind of a dream to see their book on a bookstore shelf. And it does add some legitimacy, some social proof if your book is being carried in a bookstore. So can you be successful? Absolutely. But can you be twice as successful if you're ranking on Amazon and on a bookstore shelves? Rather than thinking it's one or the other, it's how many streams of revenue can you have? How many areas to market? And as I said, bookstores are still drawing in customers. And if they're drawing in customers, that's free advertising. It's free eyes on your book. So having your book on a shelf is oftentimes one of the easiest, no cost ways to advertise your book and get new readers.
All right, so you talked about more avenues. So let's talk about airports. What does it take to get your book in airports?
A lot. So for airports, again, it's important to realize that airports have a very small book section, and they are stocking kind of specific titles. I recently was traveling this past summer. I was traveling and I happened to notice that there was a book buyer in a Hudson newsstand. And being myself, I was like, hi, can we be friends? And this woman was so gracious with her time to tell me what sells best in bookstores and their ordering process. And what I learned, or rather what was confirmed to me, is that what sells in airport stores very often is business nonfiction. It is something that is very honed to the business traveler. We're seeing a lot of standalones, not series, standalones. People want to get a book and finish it on their trip. So a lot of thrillers, a lot of mysteries, and then quite a bit of or women's fiction. If you have a book, let's say you have a book that's it's a memoir and it's about your life and it's very inspirational and lovely, but you're not a celebrity or you don't have name recognition, they're not going to carry your book because they have to capture someone in minutes. Many times people are going through these stores very quickly. Sometimes they browse, but more often they're going through and they're either going for a specific type of book or they're saying, oh, that's Kim Kardashian. Didn't she just have a book come out? I guess I'll grab that. So bookstores or newsstands in particular in airports are a little harder. However, if you have a topic that is specific to that area, let's say you are in the Atlanta airport and you have written a book all about the history of Atlanta. That book will very likely be in consideration if you pitch it to them. Do know that they, again, are looking for those specific terms, the returnability, they're looking for the correct discount, and they're looking for wholesale. They're ordering through Ingram. They have some other systems that they order through. And you must, I know it's a big thing in these circles. Do you price your barcode or not? You must price your barcode. If you would like to be carried in airport stores in particular, any big box store, you must have a priced barcode on your book. And your book must look professional. Your book needs to look like it belongs on the shelves. So really taking the time to craft a book that is beautifully done and that the outside reflects the wonderful words on the inside is so important. You can't skimp on your cover. Your cover is the face of your book, and it must be on point for your market and on trend for what's happening today.
But don't you also have to have a budget to put it in there? It's my understanding that it's a pay for play in airports, and it's pretty pricey too.
It can be. Now, not always. Again, if you have a local twist that you can push, because again, they are a business, they're looking to make money. So if you can wedge your foot in there because you have a connection somehow to that store, you can get it in. Now, there is some pay for play or co-op budgets where you are saying, okay, I will pay for marketing in your stores and I have $10,000. If your book starts to sell, well, then they'll keep selling it. But if it doesn't, they're going to say, thank you for our $10,000. We'll see you later.
Yeah.
So there is certainly some of that, and that's in all bookstores, and whether it be newsstands, airport stores, chain stores, you can usually buy your way onto a shelf, but you have to earn in order to stay there. And there are ways to get on those shelves without paying, if you know how to approach the bookstore, if you know how to, again, offer them value while asking for value of your own.
Well, that's good to know, because as far as I knew, it was always you had to write a check, and it was, $3,500 to $10,000 for just X amount of weeks on there. So that's good to know there is a chance that you can get in there without having to pay. So
Absolutely.
that's encouraging. What about libraries? Tell us, how do we get our book into libraries?
Mm-hmm. Much the same way with libraries, we are looking for how you can serve the community. Excuse me.
Sure.
We're looking for how you can serve the community. When we are looking at libraries, we are making sure that your book serves the local community. If you have a community of a lot of young children and your book is a children's book, it's going to be fairly easy to sell into that market. If, however, you have a book that is very trendy, it's very college aged, and you have no colleges around you, I'm so sorry, Melanie, just 1 second.
Sure.
I'm sorry about that. If you have a book that is very trending for the community, it'll be easier to sell, because that's what libraries do. Their job is to service the community. It is meant to draw the taxpayers in, because that's how libraries are judged. Did they serve the community? How many people came into the community? That is how they get their funding. And so they also very often will support those local authors. Always start at home, start where you have a connection and grow outwards, but also think of the communities that tend to go to the library most often. People with young children, homeschool families, you go for research on odd topics. We have a big senior community that will be in libraries. People who are avid readers. If you read mysteries, thrillers, and romance, those are some of the top categories that libraries purchase, because that is what their patrons are asking for. And the same process applies. Libraries typically will order from either Ingram Wholesale or Baker and Taylor. Baker and Taylor is usually the preferred wholesaler. And they're also growing their ebook markets, because ebooks, as we found when everything closed down, what we found is that library patrons could still read books online. They could go through the Overdrive system or the Libby system to read those ebooks. And libraries were finding that their library market in that section was woefully inadequate. And so they've started to spend a lot more money to build up the ebook market. So if you're an author, having your book available to libraries through things like Overdrive or Baker and Taylor for ebooks is a huge perk because it's cheaper for the library in some cases. And also it's an easy way that does not take up shelf space to get into the library system. I'm not asking for your shelf space. I'm just asking for a little bit of space on your website. Would you be willing to carry my ebook? And with ebook sales growing and the Overdrive system, they reported a 37% increase of checkouts last year, and we expect that to grow this year. That's a really good way to get your foot into the market with libraries, is to start with your ebook. And also, when you are pitching libraries, remember to tell them how your book will serve the community. With bookstores, it's how can you make a profit? How can we benefit each other financially? With the libraries, it's how can I help you serve your community? And that's what they're interested in there.
And I remember reading Baker and Taylor was going out of business, or now I think somebody is buying them. So I'm not sure what their distribution channels are going on with Baker and Taylor, if that's still a viable option for people to get their book out there.
Yep. So Baker and Taylor was actually bought out by Follett. And so Follett now owns Baker and Taylor. Follett is the largest textbook wholesaler. So Baker and Taylor is absolutely still a player in the game. They're not going anywhere. However, it's a little harder to get into Baker and Taylor than Ingram Wholesaler. For indies, you use Ingram Spark and you are automatically put into Ingram Wholesale, which means you've got that wholesale market available to you. Baker and Taylor is different. If you want to get into Baker and Taylor, you can, as an indie, apply directly. However, they are, again, looking for profit. They want to know how much demand there is for your book, why they should carry it, and they want great terms. They want great discounts in order to carry your book. Or you can work with a book distributor. And a book distributor is someone who is going to warehouse your books, and they are using their relationships with Baker and Taylor and Ingram to get your book into those wholesale channels, because they have not necessarily books that are selling $10,000 a month, but they have 50 books that together are selling $10,000 a month. And that is how they get into Baker and Taylor to Ingram. So if you really want the library market, working with a book distributor, who you do have to pay, they do take a percentage, that's a really great way to get your book into Baker and Taylor for library markets, if you know that's really a niche you want to get into.
Now, give us some examples of book distributors like that people could reach out to.
Sure. Two that very often are used by indies are Pathway Books and Itasca, Itasca, Itasca. And those two companies in particular work with indies quite a bit. And that's in the US. There are, of course, different distributors in the UK and Canada, but US specific, that's who I'd suggest you reach out to. And much like Ingram Wholesale takes a cut, because remember, if you use Ingram Spark for print on demand, you pay for Ingram Spark. And then there's about a 15% fee that Ingram Wholesale takes. And that is how they get paid. Book distributors have much the same model, where they are going to take about 15% of your retail cost, and that's how they get paid. So they do get paid. The more that you sell, the more they get paid, but they also have some flat fees often for warehousing, for setup, that you should expect to pay as well.
Where do you see any new ways or platforms to sell your book? Do you see that coming in the forefront? Anything bubbling that you can see that this is going to be another way for you to sell massive amounts of books?
Yeah, I think that we're seeing audiobooks are growing by leaps and bounds. We are expected in the next 6 years for audiobooks to really peak. So there's kind of a joke within the author community that people who got into Kindle, and especially Kindle Unlimited, a couple of years ago and got established, they are now making a lot of money. They were on that growth upswing. And now what we're seeing is the same thing for audiobooks. People who have audiobooks now will have a really firm footing and audience in about 6 years when it peaks. So audiobooks is a huge way. And we're also seeing for both indie and traditional authors that the author must market themselves. They must build their own reading communities. Oftentimes we see this online, whether it be through newsletters, Facebook, TikTok is a big one, depending on your age demographic. But authors must now, no matter if they're with HarperCollins or if they're doing it on their own as a self-published author, you must now market yourself more than ever. You must build your own community. Just as I said, the mom and pop indie bookstores are in some ways thriving because they've built the community behind them. Authors are having to do that as well. You have to have a following. And because there are so many books to choose from, so many authors to choose to read, it's at the point where you must build your own community. And the way that you do that is through open communication, really interacting. People want to know their authors. Gone are the days of, you can walk in and no one will know you. People want to know who they're reading books from. They want to be friends with you. And the internet makes that possible, but you have to take the time to do it. And it's almost a whole nother job. The whole marketing, yourself aspect is one of those ways. However, if you have a huge following, although we did see a New York Times article recently that said having a huge social media following doesn't necessarily play into book sales numbers. But it's how you use that following. Because if I have a large following that, let's say, is based in New York, and I then go to a bookstore and say, I have a really big following here. I want to have a book signing at your store. I have thousands of followers in New York, and I will call them to action and they will come. If I can do that, then that will leverage that for me. So it's not just enough to put yourself out there. You have to grow a community and you have to leverage that community when it counts.
Awesome. That was so much great information. Thank you, Keri-Rae. It was tremendous having you. So much information. Thanks, Keri-Rae.
Thank you.
If you want to write a book and become a best-selling author, you're in the right place. At Elite Online Publishing, we can help you create, publish, and market your book so that it becomes a #1 bestseller. We work with a limited number of authors to ensure that they receive the best possible service. So if you want to learn how to write and publish a book that will empower you to smartly grow your brand, business, and credibility, apply today. We look forward to working with you.